Welcome to Asenso Tayo Leaders, where we bring you real stories from leaders like you so you can lead with more clarity, direction, and confidence. In today's episode, our guest is a living example of the power of small. Masami Sato is the founder and CEO of B1G1, which is a global giving movement that helps business embed purpose into their everyday operations. She's a teacher, a chef, an entrepreneur, a mentor, an author, a speaker, and definitely a change maker. She is known for her passion and heart led leadership, which has inspired thousands of business owners and organization leaders to take part as a driving force for good. And you know what? At 5L, we are so proud to be part of the B1G1 movement. We're teammates, milestone, we celebrate, contribute to the project that makes a difference. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Masami Sato to our Asenso Tayo Leaders.
Maria and Michael, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to share a little bit about what we do.
And we're so happy, so thrilled, and we're so excited for this, Masami. You're gonna be our first global guest. So this is a huge leap for both Becky and I, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I want to thank you for having me as the first global speaker.
Yeah, and so Masami, many of our listeners have heard definitely about B1G1. We talk about B1G1 all the time. Every team member is also definitely involved about the passion behind the thought of B1G1, but they may not have come across you specifically before, haven't heard from you directly. So maybe I'd like to kick off with this chat as probably I would love to know about your journey. Where did it all begin and how did you arrive at the point where you are right now?
Well, actually, the beginning of this journey started perhaps much earlier, many years ago when I was growing up in Japan. As a very shy young girl who was curious about how everything worked, but also was not sure how I would express myself, I struggled to, fit into, the schools or a friendship so I was extremely introverted and I never imagined that I would be many years later doing what I do and traveling around the world and connecting with some amazing people like you too. So what happened in my journey was throughout my childhood, luckily I had grandparents who had this tiny family business. And because my parents were very busy, young, working people, and my dad worked for large companies. So they were always very busy and under lots of stress. So that's why throughout, all my childhood, like school holidays, at every opportunity, I went to spend the time at the grandparents' tiny family business and helped them run their business. So I became very familiar and accustomed to entrepreneurship through that. And I also was very curious about how everything worked in that too. So when I finished studying and graduated from school in Japan, I decided to travel around the world. So I spent my young, adulthood traveling, backpacking with very little resources. I saved up money throughout my school time to have enough saving to leave Japan. But then I didn't have so much money. So when you don't have so much money and backpacking, and you didn't even speak the language, you don't even speak the language in that country, then what you have to do is to really be vulnerable and sometimes receive people's kindness and goodness and keep going, right? So that was really the time I started to connect with what was happening really in the world and started to discover the similarities that we actually shared. Even though I used to think people in foreign countries were different, but then actually I found more and more about how similar we were, that so many people around the world were doing their best to try to be happy or provide happiness for their loved ones. And also because I saw so many challenges that the people faced, and I didn't know how to solve all those big challenges. Some of those were unimaginable, right? Like young children not even completing school education and working, or human rights issues, environmental issues. Those are big issues that I didn't know how to do anything about. But then later, when I became a mom and I had my own little child, that was when I decided to start a business. And nearly 25 years ago, I became an entrepreneur and started my first food business. And that kind of over the years led to the formation of B1G1 as the initiative that helps businesses integrate the positive impacts in what they do.
So if there's anyone out there listening who hasn't heard of B1G1, because our audience, there's a lot of leaders at 5ELK who listen, but yeah, particularly over time, we're hoping that more and more people listen to the podcast from all around the world. So for people who haven't heard of B1G1, in a nutshell, how does B1G1 help create that good in the world that you were seeking to create?
Yeah, so the naming B1G1 is a little bit strange, right? Like, what does B1G1 mean? So it used to be known as buy one, give one. And we all are familiar with this concept of buy one, get one, right? Like the kind of like a marketing offer.
Yeah. Half price pizza. Yeah.
But the B1G1, buy one, give one was the idea where everything in the world will lead to positive change. So if you imagine if every time you enjoyed your favorite cup of drink, like a cup of coffee, a child received access to life-saving water, or every time you downloaded, amazing ebook and learned something useful for you. But if a tree gets planted, or every time an accounting firm complete a tax filing, then family receives a goat or sewing machine and to start a business. Or so if we imagine the power of our everyday actions and all the things that happens naturally in the world, and if we link these natural activities we are part of with tangible, meaningful opportunities to make a difference, then all the challenges can be resolved in meaningful ways in the power of small and the power of all, bringing everyone together. So what happened was when the idea came to me nearly 20 years ago, so over 19 years ago, when I was participating in this business program as an entrepreneur. And at that time, my food company was already like 5 years old. So we did a lot of hard work to get to where we were. And we were selling and distributing frozen packaged healthy meals to more than 150 stores across Australia in different states. Our premise was every food product we sold, we would give a meal. And then what happened was after really realizing that this small impact was very powerful, because when I was busy running my business, I always said to myself that one day, when we are bigger, when we are more successful, when we have more money, more profit, then we would do something big, right? Like meaningful, set up a soup kitchen, have our own foundation, so we could have these dreams as one day wish. But then actually, when you decide to do small things like this, then you don't need to wait. You can start doing these little things. And then suddenly this little thing that we get to do today gets shared among customers, team members, everyone who is a part of this simple act of somebody enjoying the meal would be part of actually creating another smile. So we thought that this idea was so powerful. And even though I was still passionate about the food, I decided to sell the food company in Australia and then moved to Singapore with two little kids and started to be B1G1 as the independent initiative, global initiative, create the system, methodologies, and the network to make this way of doing business happen. So that's been like 18 years in making since then.
You looked to solve the problem directly initially. You're like, how can I feed as many people as possible? But then by taking that helicopter view and going, if I went one step up the chain and actually empowered other businesses, I could have more of an impact. I think it's a really interesting way of thinking. And so what I'd be interested in is, how has that worked out? To put it bluntly, like, how many impacts have you been able to create through B1G1, through that approach of empowering other leaders to do good in the world?
I wish like we could have said billions and billions of impact, right? Like, but what's inspiring is over the years, when we started to work with small to medium-sized businesses, rather than from day one saying like, let's go and then get the big companies do this,
Yeah.
because that could have been easier to create more
Yeah.
impact, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we realized that this group of business people are very special, like small to medium-sized business leaders, because they come from their personal passion to do what they do. And then business is not easy. So you overcome all these challenges to grow your business and mission. So we wanted to enable these smaller, small to medium-sized businesses to integrate impact. And
Yes.
over the last 18 years, more than 380 million impacts have been created.
Oh
And
my
these
gosh.
impacts, all little things like the number of trees being planted or days of access to education. And it's individually, it's small, but then because it covers all spectrum of challenges in so many parts of communities around the world. So I think that we have achieved collectively great things, but what we can even look out and look forward to is the potential of the new time where more businesses and more causes can join in to actually create this, aspiring future that we want to create, rather than feeling overwhelmed in times where so much change is happening. What if everything existed as opportunities for us to create positive change?
I love your humility. Like, I felt like you were setting us up there to say, look, the number's not big, but it's what we deliberately did that. And then all of a sudden you drop 380 million. And I mean, that is just mind blowing. When you were in your food service business, directly trying to solve the problem of helping feed people, I'm sure 380 million would have felt completely wild and beyond your wildest dreams, really.
What you have done in 5ELK is also really amazing, right? Because I was just checking out like the work that you do. And, you have created something like 57,000 days of, you have given 57,000 days of access to safe shelter to disadvantaged people, and then totaling more than 70,000 impacts. What I really love about the work that we get to do with companies like yours is these businesses are collective of stories. You have your clients who have stories, but you have team members who have extraordinary stories. And when we bring these stories together, and the power of intention, like a positive intention to add value to each other, but also to add value to the people we might never meet, without actually directly expecting the thank you back, right? Like, so what we can achieve is profound, because it's not only the number of impacts that we can count right here, but the ripple effect of what happens to those lives when people get access to education. Like we can count the number of days, right? Because we can do financial breakdown.
Yeah.
But that like future potential of these new leaders we get to create together is profound.
I was just going to say the butterfly effect, and then I looked at the butterfly behind you. I'm like, that's not an accident that's there, right?
Yeah, because butterfly is very symbolic metaphor too, as well as the bees. And we talked a little bit earlier about the bees, right? Like a symbolic nature of these pollinators and what that means, because businesses actually can exist to pollinate the flowers in the world rather than just extracting the nectar and avoiding the pollination, right? Because it's annoying to carry extra pollen. So we go like, oh, it's not so effective. Doesn't maximize profit, like and then
exactly.
pollinating. So that's kind of like literally what we have done in the business to try to maximize and extract more just for our own good. But then actually pollinating and giving back to the ecosystem and the nature, and then to the soil of our farm, right? Like it's actually fundamental mission of business. So we need to bring back this natural act of pollination. The butterfly is also another interesting metaphor, because what happens is when the butterfly is a caterpillar, it's aimlessly just to eat more. It's like a bunch up all the whatever they can eat, right? Then what happened was then when they go into the cocoon, this amazing thing happened to these caterpillars inside the cocoon, that their every cell in their body dissolve, and then they form this beautiful butterfly. So they once become almost like a liquid, they did. And then it will become the totally new being, which only exists to actually give beauty and the pollen and then to create the life for that.
Transformation.
Yeah. So that transformation of butterfly is also very interesting because in today's time, with all of the disruption, all of the changes, we have to kind of almost let go of our status quo. And then instead of continuing on with the conflict or challenges or all the issues that we actually created in the modern world, we could go like, okay, now we can choose to transform this society into something that actually create this beauty and prosperity and joy for all. And that becomes the greatest win because now we know that the creating the prosperity for all is the real win that brings continuous prosperity for ourselves and our own children and grandchildren.
It's really interesting hearing you speak because, I mean, you've got a clear purpose and then you've navigated your path to realize that purpose and create more of that impact. And it was actually really lovely hearing then that, you know, as a business, 5ELK has made 57,000 days of shelter because, yeah, I know that Danielle didn't start the business to make money. She started the business to make life better for 1,000 people in the Philippines. And I mean, that number will grow over time for sure. So I suppose my question is that you and Danielle are great examples of people who start with a purpose and then lead towards that purpose. I think the path, though, for other leaders that we work with, certainly leaders at 5ELK, but beyond 5ELK as well, is more of they take a leadership job because they want a pay rise. You know, get good at their job, they get promoted, and all of a sudden they wake up one day and they're like, oh, actually, I'm a leader. But they've never really had that conversation with themselves around what their purpose is or what impact they could be creating in the world. So I suppose for people out there who are new to the concept of purpose-driven leadership, what does that mean to you? And, you know, how would you describe what that is? And why do you think that's so important for leaders to consider?
So getting to the very heart of that question, I think it's very, very simple. And it's because it's a real win-win. You know, starting with a purpose or focused on purpose is a real win-win. But let me just go into why. Because the purpose became such a keyword that everybody seems to be looking for purpose. But purpose cannot be found by looking. To me, there were like some interesting experiences, but where I learned the most was when I was living in countryside and living with farmers. And at one point when I was young, right, after looking at the world and what was happening, and I at one point became a little bit skeptical and judgmental about what was happening in the world because I saw my parents work so hard to climb the corporate ladder and have more. And then eventually when I became a teen, like compared to when I was very young, like when my parents were actually quite poor, but because they worked really hard and saved and they started to have more access to material, like such as buying more stuff and, you know, having more things in the house, or we then had a car but the happiness inside the house didn't grow. And that was one of the primary reasons I left Japan. But then I realized that something strange was happening in the world because I stayed in so many different countries and met so many people, and everybody had this like aspiration and kindness. But then having more didn't necessarily convert into the amount of happiness. And sometimes I saw so many beautiful smiles in people who had so little, but they were happy to share what they had with me. And they said, oh, come and eat with me. And I was sitting on the mud floor and sharing some food. And I go like, oh, I shouldn't take from them because they had so little. So then I realized that actually something was not making sense, right? So when I was living with farmers, initially thinking that this consumerism was wrong, you know, like the driving all sort of problems in the world. So I tried to live with farmers in countryside to try to create this totally self-sufficient life where I didn't have to buy things anymore. So I thought, I'm not going to buy things. You know, I'm just going to live in harmony with nature and make everything and then not have waste. And so that was what I tried to do to justify my existence in the world because I didn't know how to solve big problems out there. So I thought I would just kind of do what I can do about my life. But then what I discovered when I had the 2 years of working in the nature with farmers was this essence of what constitutes abundance in the world. And which was that it's very, very simple and very logical that farmers start by creating fertile soil, right? Like, and then understand the nature and natural cycle and understand the ecosystem inside so that you select the plant that thrive in the environment and respect the whole nature and ecosystem around you, right? And so that's like the natural way that the nature create abundance year after year. The focus is actually to give, give to the soil first before you try to get it, right? Like, but then what happened was in our education program, somehow we learned that we have to become a go-getter, which means we have to think about what do I get first. So in our pursuit of great life, we would think naturally, and that's not to blame anybody, but because that's how we learn to grow up, right? So then we go, how do I get the best promotion? How do we get more benefits and stuff like that to try to get the better opportunity for yourself and for your family? But what happens is when you get sucked into the getting focused cycle of life, you are competing with other people who want to actually get more for themselves. And then no matter how much you have, you still feel a little bit lacking because you see somebody else who has more, right? Like, and you go like, oh, I don't have as much, or, like the other people have more, and then you continue to feel this like underlying feeling of lack and complaint about your life.
Yeah.
But then when you go into the giving cycle, which we can do instantly, we can change it instantly because it's only the perception. So what we do is, okay, how can I add maximum value? What kind of work opportunity where I can bring the best of me to add value to people? And then you might end up even like you become an apprentice or volunteer your time or find the right perfect job opportunity, but you show up with the giving spirit. And then what happens is it gives you really the maximum learning opportunity, joyful opportunity, amazingly joyful relationships, and you naturally get surrounded by other people who operate in the giving cycle. And then you go like, oh, I haven't done too much, but then I just became lucky. Like more opportunities and the more good things come to me. And then I always feel that I'm receiving more than what I dream of.
Yeah. That's such an interesting way of thinking. So I suppose my question was based on the premise that you get clear on your purpose, then you live it. Whereas it sounds like what you're saying is, no, you do good things for people and then your purpose kind of emerges out of that. It becomes something clear to you over time through action, not through thinking or planning.
Yeah, because like even the purpose, when purpose is like more of abstract idea, but then even that you are thinking like, how do I get it? Because it sounds like people are saying we should get it, you should have it. So you go like, how do I have it? How do I get it? And then when you are chasing for your purpose, sometimes you make up like something that is not so authentic, but then you believe that you have to say something very impressive to show off your purpose. So maybe you don't get the other people who really understand your purpose. But what happens is if you are thinking about something you want to have or experience, such as you want to have a loving relationship, for example, then the way to have loving relationship is not to try to get it from others, but to actually naturally give. You be loving, you support people, you give kind words, you be giving, and you appreciate people. Then whilst you are doing it, you kind of naturally fall in love with the day-to-day, including how you are as a human being. But if you are the one who is committed to give what you already recognize as what you have, you are starting with something you already are in control of. You don't have to make somebody to do the things for you or luck to come to you. But you know that helping somebody is your choice and you can do with where you are at and what you already have. So you don't need to actually rely on anybody else or any external circumstance. And the moment you do it without expecting anything back either, you don't need to be thanked when you're being kind. Even if people don't appreciate, you go like, oh, but I had a good time.
Yeah.
I love that. And Masami, you know what? There's a lot of memories flashing my mind right now. So many images of people doing everyday little good things. But I'm curious, Masami, because sometimes in leadership and also in businesses, right? Sometimes we already have like a purpose. We're so driven. Okay, this is what I'll do. This is the kind of impact. But sometimes there are moments like not everybody is on board, right? Now, I just want to ask, like, I'm just curious to know in your experience, like when you were in that time when you're telling everybody the purpose and what you want to achieve and the kind of impact. Were there moments wherein there were people who were kind of like pulling against what you were trying to do? And how were you able to kind of like manage that? Is there something you did personally or probably a mentor that you leaned on to or things like that?
I see this whole thing as a journey and almost like the game that we get to play. So the journey and the game is never perfect either way. And then that's because that's how it is. And if it was perfect, there's no point to play, right? Like because you can predict everything and you are in control of everything. So you don't get to have the experience of learning and enjoyment through the game. So I think that, of course, again, even though you are fundamentally committed to bring your best to the game, there were times that you feel discouraged or feel a bit down. And then the emotional struggle, what makes human beings very special. Because if emotional struggle didn't have to exist, then we could just be a computer program and that's the job.
Yeah.
So somehow we inherited this opportunity from somewhere to live as a human being with emotions. And the magic of it is that we get to experience some of the most beautiful things, such as love, creativity, joy, compassion. Like we get to have that. But then at the same time, we also get to experience things like sadness, like self-doubt, pain, anger, like frustration, like all of that is part of who we are. So we
Yep.
don't need to deny those emotions. But what we get to do is when you are operating, like when you are choosing the game to be the game of love and kindness, then naturally speaking, you form these relationships and an environment that support you when you are feeling you need a little bit of tailwind because you created the space where you are showing up as one of the contributors of the game. So you stand for the opportunities when others need you. Others need more positive encouragement and love, then you are there without judging. But at the same time, you also need to be actually human and accept the fact that we can never be totally perfect all the time. If we have people around us, we could simply say, I feel like this today. So if other people don't get the enthusiasm of the good that you want to do, you could just like not impose that expectation to other people because everybody has their own journey and the feelings that they go through and the reasons for behaving and feeling the way they do. So if we actually remove the expectation and then able to say, this is how I feel like why I want to live like this. I want to do things like this. But like in the world of business, like there are other important priorities and people might not feel that they have time to do this, but I just want to continue to do this. Like, would you help? Like, would you share with me your feedback? Why do you feel like this? And so that like being real with everyone and not judging the people would actually more likely to make other people feel that even though they might disagree with you, they are pretty happy to help you understand the things better or criticize you like very bluntly. And then you can say, wow, thank you so much for that criticism and honest feedback because that will make me understand the things better about what we can do, like in a better way. So I think everything and everyone exists in this world with perfect reason. And every challenge in the world also exists with perfect reason. So if we step out a little bit and remove the immediate feeling of judgment about what's right and wrong or who is right and wrong, then we actually create a space where every person's experience and unique quality can come in a nice balance. Sometimes you realize you are wrong, like actually I had a fixed perception about this.
Yeah.
And you can be the first person to also recognize that and gain from that experience.
Yes. I'm getting a really strong feeling from, just your attitude and the way you see the world is it's not about controlling the people around you to be a certain way, but almost to be the example and to be generous. And it's almost about managing the way you show up first, and then other people will find their own way to join that, whatever it is.
What I want to continue to remind myself is that the power of joy that we get to experience. And I forget that all the time. Like things get too serious. And like and then you get a bit attached to the idea or something, right? But then the thing is, I think that what is just the most precious thing in the world is the joy. And if we are making the game more joyful for more people, then that's the ultimate purpose of playing a game. Otherwise, like, why do we get attached to so much when we die and leave this planet? And every single one of us one day leave this planet.
Yes.
And at that time, we cannot take anything that we created, like materials or money or, with us. We just leave, we disappear and vanish. And at that time, what is it that we feel to leave when we cannot take anything? And that is just how much joy we get to have in our lifetime, and how we feel, and the gratitude and the love we feel for the people who are behind us and also in front of us, who are our ancestors and the parents and grandparents who might have already gone, but they somehow left this precious opportunity for us. So how do we feel about the gift that we inherited, but also the gift we leave behind? If that's the case, joy is probably the kind of most joyful winning point that we get to have.
Yeah. And it's contagious.
Yeah, the inner
So
joy comes out all of a sudden.
Yeah, and
You
it
don't
pollinates.
realize it. Yes.
Yeah. Masami, I want to change gears a little bit because I'll be really honest. I think a lot of people would listen to you speak and be so inspired, but they would also potentially not understand that, you talked about the light and the dark before, and how the journey isn't, that there are challenges. And I was really struck, and I mean, it was in the first few pages of your book, Giving Business, where you talked about that as a kid, you couldn't find your voice and you were nervous speaking. And then, I contrast that with seeing videos of you speak at a TED event in Singapore. A lot of people see the highlights package, but they don't see the raw footage. That, one way to think about it. So I'd just be interested for you, and I don't know what your flavor of this might be, but even now, the position you're in, having built the incredible business and life and generous life that you have, do you still experience self-doubt? Do you still have imposter syndrome? What's the side of Masami that other leaders out there might not see that potentially will validate the way they are feeling?
Somebody said to me, my good friend said to me, that Masami is a leader with one of the kind of greatest imposter syndrome, like a biggest imposter syndrome. So that's why he said to me. And I don't know where it came from, but I always doubted myself when I was growing up, and I was afraid to say or do anything because I didn't want to upset anybody. And as a result of it, I found joy in being out there and always thinking, how can I give? How can I add value? How can I help people? But I put myself like kind of in the shadow of things, so I didn't have to think about me. But I think now I starting to feel different. And that's part of the reason why even speaking on a big stage to hundreds or thousands of people even, I never feel nervous anymore, because I realize the most powerful part of it all is the realization that it's not even about you. Because self-doubt and imposter syndrome happens because you think it's about you. You think you have to be the one to show up as an impressive leader or a perfect person to do something. But what if you were only part of this like speck in a bigger scheme of things, and somehow there are all sort of characters in this game, right? Like, and you are looking from outside, and then you see the magic and both the strength and the weakness and the characteristics of every individual in this game, and you let go of the attachment, and so you don't need to try to say things to prove you or something. And then you go like, okay, well, actually, how this character fit in the great scheme of things to make this game more joyful for everyone. Then you appreciate your character as much as you appreciate and love every character. And then, so that removing judgment is very powerful in living life with joy, but also that removing the judgment is also towards judgment towards yourself. And because we could only do it both. We cannot just go, oh, I'm not going to judge anybody, but I judge myself.
Mhm.
Or I
Wow.
judge everybody
Yeah.
else, but I don't judge myself.
That
Yeah.
one too.
So that's why when you are committed to removing the judgment, you be more mindful about removing judgment from how you see others, but how you see yourself. And when you bring more joy and acceptance and trust and love towards yourself as well as everything, because you are only part of everything, then things get easier.
Yeah.
And then when things get easier and more joyful, you start to do something you couldn't do before. And then you don't even worry about it.
That's kind of mind-blowing to me to know that that feeling can disappear. You know, that you can kind of detach yourself from that need to do a great job and to just realize that, you know, it isn't about you, it's about others.
And it's not
So-
the permanent status, right? Like sometimes you get
Sure.
trapped in the game and go like,
Yeah.
why
Again
is
and
this
go
happening?
again.
So, sometimes the
like-
nerves kick in. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
someone's out there now and they have a lot of self-doubt and that feeling that, oh gosh, everyone around me has no idea how bad I am and I'm going to get found out and all of those ugly feelings. I mean, what would like the first step be for them?
Yeah.
What would you recommend they do to just, it's not a Band-Aid solution. It's obviously a journey to get to the point that you're at. But what would be, I suppose, some of the first steps to overcoming that self-doubt?
I think if you forget about how to fix that part and things like that, and you just show up for somebody else, then, you know, like the self-doubt would naturally go away, because when you are being the one to focus on giving, caring, loving, even though you would still doubt yourself, right? Like, and the hardest part is the decision making. Self-doubt creeps into our decision making, and it's not only that self-doubt, but the doubt for the future. You know, bad things happened in the past, so you can't trust others or you can't trust yourself, and you start worrying about what could happen in the future, and then as a result, you can't make a decision and you freeze. And I experienced that too. But the thing is, when we are actually coming, you know, showing up to focus on how to make it better for everyone and how to add value to in the every moment, then you naturally overcome these things as a part of, you know, learning in the game. In the learning in the game, it helps when we get to do things. Like sometimes doing helps, you know, like show
Yes.
up and do,
Yeah.
like create a habit of doing. And say kind things, say smile and then greet people and do the
Yep.
things that might be a little bit unfamiliar, but just to keep doing, and naturally it becomes being.
Yes.
But then also understanding why we do that. Why is not to prove ourselves, why is for us to actually have the most meaningful life and enjoy that lifetime with some great people around us.
Something we talk a lot with our leaders about is it's not, I need to be ready before I do these things. It's by doing the things you start to feel ready and become ready, if there even is a ready. So it's a process of taking action rather than waiting for some perfect point where you're ready.
And then
because
just figuring it out too.
yeah,
along
because
the way.
we learn, right? Like in the game, like sports player learn every day.
Yes.
And the only
Yeah.
way that they are master of a particular sport is because they practice, but the practice is like everything that you do is a failure.
Yeah.
You know, because you are practicing, so you fail
Yeah.
every day and you make mistakes every day. And because you are making mistakes and failing so much, so many times, then you become stronger as a result of it. And you gain new skills and, you know, master new skills.
Yeah.
But yeah, without that failure and the repetition, we would never become the master of the game. So we just have to show up for the practice sessions.
What a powerful reframe. There's no such thing as failure. It's just practice. That just makes it feel so much more enticing and acceptable and something you lean into rather than lean away from. That's such a simple reframe, but I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Now, Masami, before we finish up, we need to expose you to a tradition in this podcast where we have a set of questions that we ask every guest. They're called our quick climb questions, and they're just some rapid fire questions that we want the first thought that comes into your head as to how you would answer each. And I'm going to throw to Maria to ask the first one.
So for quick climb questions, first up is, Masami, what's a big mistake you've made as a leader, and what did you learn from it?
Probably is thinking that it's about the destination or the goal that mattered.
What's a surprisingly simple leadership tip that actually works?
Actually, treat everyone as almost like your extended family. It's not just about being nice to people because as parents, we can be very strict or, honest, blunt or encouraging, or so we can say the truth, right? Like, so I think that's really makes a huge difference. when
Oh,
we
I
can-
love that so much. Yeah. And sometimes in a family, you're brutally honest, but
Yeah.
sometimes you need to be. Yeah. Beautiful. Love that.
And what are you trying to get better at, even if you're still figuring it out?
I want to become actually smarter in my brain too. Like I wish like, oh, I had better
What?
memory or,
Uh,
like the quicker way to learn AI skills or, yeah, like, I mean,
Okay.
that's because it's fun. Learning and getting
Oh.
better is fun.
You're so out there. Didn't even realize that you're looking for something to improve on. It's really humbling.
Always.
Yeah.
When things get tough, how do you respond?
This is our mascot called
Uh-huh.
Jumpy, and he
Jumpy?
helps me. Yeah, he helps me with
Hey, Jumpy.
You didn't know it was coming.
I
Yes, I
didn't
did.
expect a monkey. So you just give Jumpy a hug and that helps you get through the tough time.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a Jumpy too.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
running away now. He doesn't
Running-
want to be stolen.
Gosh, we might need to have another podcast where we interview you and Jumpy. It sounds like he's got some wisdom. He
yeah,
or she
very
has some wisdom
comforting.
as well.
Yes, during the pandemic, he was appearing on some of the podcasts I did during that time.
Ah,
Oh, okay. Okay, next up. If you could give one piece of leadership advice to your younger self, what would that be?
It's all okay.
It sounds like there's a whole heap of podcast episode for that one.
yes.
Yeah.
It's just, I just want to call this out. There's such a lightness to the way you look at business and leadership. And it's almost a playfulness, but it's almost liberating to know that it can feel good. It's not that it has to feel hard in order for it to be rewarding. I think you're
Yeah.
just such a beautiful example of how you can bring your heart and this playful, fun, light energy to it. And in fact, it might actually work better if you do it that way. I think it's so special to both hear you say that, but to witness you living that in practice too through this conversation. It's very, very cool.
Thank you. And it doesn't mean we are not serious. We are extremely serious.
Of
about
course,
doing
of
things
course. Yeah.
properly. But I think, when the challenges emerge, you can take it as the greatest defeat or something that we need to blame ourselves or others or something, right? But if we actually can see it as the greatest learning and experience to make the most of that learning,
Yes.
and be a bit lighthearted so that the people who actually did it wrongly, like in their perception, don't feel too bad, right? Like, so we can pick
Yeah.
ourselves up, dust ourselves, and then keep working.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it helps.
Second last question. And we will put a link to your books in the show notes.
Mm.
So you can leave your books out of this. But for up and coming leaders out there who just want to read a book that has changed how you see the world or has made you the leader you are, what would be your must read book for an up and coming leader?
One kind of books I used to read a lot were novels, like because I think you find so much in the stories rather than like a lessons, like a book of lessons.
Interesting.
So I think it's good that we read, right? Like we can watch a movie and Netflix shows, but reading actually gives you like an interesting way to immerse yourself
Yeah.
into the head of, or heart of
Mm.
characters, right? Like, so that's great. Another types of book is like books in particular talks about the power of habit and stuff like that. There's a book called The Power of Habit, which I highly recommend, but there are other books like Atomic Habit and all other.
Yeah.
So habit books are great because I think that's actually one of the keys to really like mastering our game
Yeah.
in forming our like life in a way that we
Yeah.
show up to be the best version of us every day. Yeah, so those are the types of books I recommend.
Masami, you would see how much Becky's eyes just glowed when you said Atomic Habits book.
I love that book. Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you why my eyes glowed though there, Maria. I just had this moment where I realized that's what B1G1 is. It's like a plug-in habit for businesses where they don't have to think about giving. It just happens automatically. So it's almost like you've hacked the psychology of habits through the business.
Yeah, definitely. We always talk about the impact, habit, and connection as the essence and the three pillars of why we do what we do and what we focus on, because it's about impacts, but also creating impact habitually and do it together, as a form of connection, because we can never fix all of the problems alone. But if we do it together, it's actually far more fun and meaningful. So that's why B1G1 exists. And just one more book that I would recommend, but we don't have it yet, is the Joy book. So what happened is I wrote this book called Joy just before B1G1 was officially launched. And that's a super simple book. But what we are doing is we actually realized that we could actually take the essence of it and create a new Joy book. And we will be releasing it soon. So
Are we the
once
first
it's
one who knows it?
available, yes, can I share the link with you so you can add to the show note later? It's coming soon.
We would love that. We will happily
Yes.
promote that, and we will buy a hell of a lot of copies as well.
Yes,
That's so
please,
cool.
please. Like we create this tiny book so that it becomes like a nice gift message.
Yeah.
And then it's invite people into the world of giving spirit and how little things makes a huge difference together.
Oh, beautiful.
We should get that.
Anyway, I just had so much fun talking with both of you, and I want to thank you for the opportunity, but I want to thank everybody who is listening to this episode and this conversation, because I think really together, when we bring that our human essence and unique gift, then we really can change anything and create an amazing future.
And likewise, Masami, we can't thank you enough for this opportunity. And, everything that you've said just hits to the core. The reason why we should do things, it's not just about, you mentioned it's not about you, just making sure that, it's coming from within and everything will just flow through. That your energy is so contagious that I think even in this airwaves of podcasts and the internet, I can just feel it. And I'm sure every leader out there, all of our team members are Filipinos on the ground, and we do have a team in Australia as well, but I'm sure everyone would so relate to everything that you've said and will get a lot from it. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And, if there ever is any opportunities to do something great together, B1G1 and the 5ELK, then, we can inspire more people together as well. So looking forward to making many great things happen with you too.
We will be taking you up on that. Thank you so much. and thank you for making the world better, Masami.
Thank you for everything you do.
Likewise.